group 14. That was just arbitrary, by the way. I just chose 14 because I figured none of these other polygons in the model would likely be using the number 14. So now, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to probably put all of these polygons here in the same smoothing group. But I'm not going to want them to be in 14, because if they're in 14, the angle here is too harsh, and if I try and smooth them together, watch what happens. You get a very strange sort of smoothing that's happening, because it's trying to smooth something that's almost a 90-degree angle with something else that's almost a 90-degree angle away from it. So we don't want to do that, so I'm going to turn it on to number 15. Then likewise, I'm going to select these polygons here. I'm going to say clear all, and I'm going to put them in 15 because they're separated by the one that's in group number 14. I'm going to select these bottom ones. I'm going to say clear all, and I'm going to put them in group number 14. So that about does it for smoothing. Maybe I'll put these ones here on the side. I'll clear them and put them into 14 as well. Or, sorry, what do we have here for the side? We have 6. So I'm going to go and put these ones in 6. And the other side here seems to be smoothing all right. Let's just find out. Okay, apparently these have no smoothing group. So I'm going to select all of them. I'm going to put them all in the very same smoothing group. We'll give them 16. And now you have a model that's kind of smoothing together a little bit more nicely. So that's smoothing groups. Now I'm just going to move on to some of the edit edges tools and some of the edit vertex tools, and that will conclude our demo of the editable poly tools. So under edit edge, you've already seen the ring command, and you've already seen the loop command. So now let's look at some things that we can do with those. So one of the first things that you might want to look at is remove. Say you added too much topology here to this edge, so you want to remove this loop. So you can select one edge, say loop, and then hit remove. Now this is very important though. If I go to vertex mode, you'll notice that the corresponding vertices for that edge are still there, even though the edge itself is not. Now the reason for that is because if you just hit remove, it only works on that element. It doesn't work on the corresponding elements to that element. So you'd have to go to vertex mode and hit remove too if you wanted to get rid of those vertices. But there's a faster way to do that. What you can do is you can go back to your loop that you selected, and then you can hold Control and hit remove. Now what that will do is, just like hitting Control and moving over to vertex mode, it will remove the corresponding elements to that edge as well. So that's the remove tool. Like extruding a polygon, you can also extrude an edge. So when you extrude an edge, however, it will give you a base to extrude it from. And all the vertices attached to that edge will split apart and break into multiple vertices. So as you can see, by extruding this edge, I end up with a few n-gons here, which would later need to be triangulated. But I also end up with some somewhat cool sort of effects here. So while we're on the topic of triangulating, that will bring me to my next point, which is I'm going to show you the weld dialog. So with the weld dialog, you can weld on faces, you can weld on edges, and you can weld on verts. So basically what the weld does is it will weld the vertices that correspond with your selection based on a threshold. So with these two edges that I've selected, they each have two vertices that correspond to them. If I wanted to collapse those vertices or weld them together, I could select my edge selection, and then I could crank up my weld threshold. And when I get to a certain point, okay, hold on here. Let's move to vertex selection, crank up my selection. Okay, so pardon me, it doesn't work with edges, and in fact I rarely use that anyways. I always weld with vertices. So basically I cranked up my weld threshold after selecting those edges and then changing them to vertex selection. And as you can see, it collapses them together. And if I keep bringing up my threshold, it will collapse greater and greater distance vertices together until it ends up collapsing my entire selection. Also, if I want, I can add to my selection. And eventually I can weld all the other vertices in my selection together too. If I crank this up even more, then I will end up welding all of those front end vertices together. But that's a little bit too much. Now another way to weld vertices or to triangulate is this button next to the weld button, which is called target weld. Now what target weld does is it allows you to grab a vertex and then just drag it over to the other vertex which you would like to weld it to. So that tool itself has a ton of various different applications, but it's very straightforward. Just click on one vertex, click on the other one that you would like to weld it to, and voila, it will just bang it over to the next vertex there. So that's the target weld. I'm going to move back over to edge. Again, target weld works with edges. You can target weld edges together, but I tend not to use it in that capacity. I always use target weld with vertices. Moving on with the edge tool, we have our connect tool, which I've already shown you. So I'll show you that to you one more time. You just make your selection and then hit connect, and you can choose how many segments you want to put in there. You can pinch them together or move them outwards, and so on and so forth. So that's connect. Once again, you can repeat last if you like. And actually, after that, there's not too much more that I want to show you with the edge selection tool. So lastly, we have our vertex selection. Many of the different options in vertex selection are the same as they are in both polygon and edge selection. We have our remove tool, where we can remove the vertex. And most of the time when you remove the vertex, however, it will remove the corresponding edges, unless the vertex is just out there in the middle of a polygon or something. So we have remove. We have break, which I tend not to use very often. But what break does is it will basically break apart all of the polygons, the corners of the polygons attached to that vertex. Or it will break that vertex into 4 different vertices, or 3, depending on how many polygons are touching that vertex. And that can be useful for certain things, if you want to punch a hole in something at the location of the vertex. Then you can use break to break that off. Likewise, if we want to, we can also extrude a vertex. I've got to undo a little bit more there. There we go. So again, just like extruding an edge, if we hit extrude, the extrude dialog, then you'll have your extrusion base and your extrusion height. And it will create 4 vertices, or however many polygons are touching that vertex at the base of your extrusion. So that's how to extrude a vertex. Another thing that we can do is we can chamfer. Now chamfering is just like extruding, except that it doesn't extrude a polygon out. It just creates a new polygon in between the vertices by chamfering them apart. So if I wanted to create some more topology there, where that vertex is, I could just easily go and chamfer my vertex to create some more topology there. The last thing that I want to show you is connect. Connecting is simple. You just grab, it works different with vertices or vertices than it does with edges. You can just grab 2 vertices and say connect, and it will draw an edge in between them. In fact, however, you can even grab 2 or more vertices, as I'm about to show you. Say I wanted to triangulate this n-gon. I can grab these 3 vertices and hit connect, and it will connect edges in between all 3 vertices in the most logical way. So now I've already created that polygon there by chamfering it, and I have everything nicely triangulated over. And if I wanted to now, I could go ahead and I could bevel it, and then I could go ahead and collapse it if I wanted to, and try to create a neat little shape there. And we're almost finished. The last thing that I want to show you, which is really good for subdividing objects or doing subdivision modeling, is what's known as a chamfer. I missed it when I was demonstrating the edge tools, so I'll show it now. So you can select an edge or a loop of edges, and then you just go over here to chamfer, and what it will do is it will create as many edges as you designate under the number of segments, and it will average the fall off of those edges. It will basically round that corner, that edge out. And based on the chamfer amount, it will do it more widely and more smoothly based on the number of segments. So again, if you just do one segment, it will just chamfer it on a 45 degree. If you bump it up to 3 or 4, you get a much rounder chamfer. And you can do that on any number of edges if you like. You have to be careful where you do it to, because it will create some weird angons and stuff on corresponding geometry if you do it on edges that are attaching to other geometry. In this case, it didn't create any angons that I didn't already have though. So there you have it. That is my introduction to 3D Studio Max interface and polygonal modeling tools under the Edit Poly modifier. I hope that was very informative to you, and I hope that will give you the basis to begin trying to create some models of your own using these very powerful tools to edit your geometry. Stay tuned for the next portion of this tutorial, where I will show you these polygonal modeling tools in a practical application by modeling a very cool retro TV. This has been Caleb Ellsworth for CG Tips Plus, and have a good afternoon.